Clarity is dangerous when you've been surviving on reason. Here's what I realized, quietly, painfully, without anyone saying it to me. I wasn't afraid of being wrong. I was afraid of losing the moral position I'd built my entire story on. Because once you lose that position, you have to look at your choices without the protection of reaction. You have to admit your decisions weren't forced. They were chosen. And that's the moment I stopped feeling like a woman who had been hurt and started feeling like a woman who had been skilled. Skilled at rationalizing, skilled at redirecting, skilled at making the story sound fair. Skilled enough that I almost believed it myself. That's not a confession, not yet. It's just the first time I noticed what I was doing while I was doing it. There's a version of womanhood that's rewarded quietly, not praised loudly, not celebrated in dramatic ways, but approved of. She's the one who keeps things together, the one who doesn't need much, the one who doesn't ask questions that disrupt the room. She's cooperative and reasonable. I learned early on how much safety there is in being that woman. People trust her. They don't worry about her. They assume she's fine, even when she doesn't say she is, especially when she doesn't say she is. I've always known how to become her. You pay attention. You observe what's valued. You notice which women are admired and which ones are quietly dismissed. The emotional ones, the reactive ones, the ones who make their needs visible too soon. I didn't want to be confusing. I wanted to be legible. Legible women get chosen. Legible women get taken seriously. Legible women don't scare people off. So I learned the language, not just the words, the tone, the timing, the restraint. You learn when to soften a sentence, when to add context, when to say it's not a big deal, even if it is. Especially if it is. I didn't think of this as self-erasure. I thought of it as intelligence. Why escalate something that could be managed? Why dramatize what could be handled internally? That's what mature people do. They regulate, they contextualize, they don't act on every impulse. At least, that's what I told myself. There was a moment in that session where I noticed something else. Not something I said, something I didn't. There was a sentence I kept circling. I could feel it forming, the way you feel a word on the tip of your tongue. But every time I got close, I redirected. I'd pivot to context, to explanation, to fairness. I kept saying what made sense. I never said what happened. That's when I realized I wasn't avoiding pain. I was avoiding specificity. Specificity has consequences. Once you name something clearly, you can't manage it the same way. It stops being abstract. It stops being theoretical. It becomes a fact. And facts don't care how reasonable you are. I kept thinking, I'll get to it. Not today, not in this session, but eventually. That's another thing composure gives you. The illusion of time. You tell yourself you're not avoiding, you're pacing, you're being responsible, you're making sure you're ready. Ready for what? That was the part I couldn't answer. I've always understood the value of optics, not in a shallow way, in a practical one. The way things look matters. Because perception shapes response. People are kinder when your life makes sense to them. They're more generous with nuance, more patient with complexity. When your choices align with what's expected, you're given the benefit of the doubt. That benefit becomes a kind of insurance. I didn't build my life randomly. I made decisions that signaled stability, consistency, trajectory, career, relationship, timeline. From the outside, it looked intentional, and it was, which is why it mattered so much that the story didn't fracture. Because once people stop recognizing you, they start asking questions. And questions are dangerous when you're still relying on reason to protect you. Here's the part I hadn't said out loud yet. Not because it was shocking, but because it threatened the structure I'd built. I wasn't afraid of being judged. I was afraid of being reclassified. From reasonable to reckless. From composed to complicit. Once that happens, people stop listening to your explanations. They start narrating you instead. And I wasn't ready to lose authorship of my own story.